I think, it calms me down. And I used to drink a lot. I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes. Now I don't.
Willie Nelson has lived through moments that would have ended most careers, but nothing could have prepared him for what is happening now. He's a legend, a man who changed country music forever. Yet behind the scenes, his life was filled with painful family tragedies, scandals, and battles he rarely spoke about publicly. And just when people thought they had heard everything, a new wave of devastating rumors began spreading online. Willie has finally stepped forward to address them, and the truth is far more shocking than anyone expected. Willie Nelson's rise to fame. Willie Nelson is one of the few artists whose name alone is part of American history. His long career, iconic voice, and unmistakable look turned him into a legend. But behind the scenes, he has carried more battles than most people realize. Willie Hugh Nelson was born on April 29, 1933, in the tiny town of Abbott, Texas. His childhood became tough when his mother left soon after he was born. To make matters worse, a few years later, his father walked away as well. Willie and his older sister Bobby were raised by their grandparents, who worked hard to give them stability. They didn't have much, but they tried to create a home that felt safe. Willie grew up during the Great Depression, a time when money was scarce and everyone worked to survive. He spent much of his childhood picking cotton in the fields around Abbott, sometimes for long hours in the Texas heat. He also took on small jobs wherever he could find them. At the age of 6, music entered his life when his grandfather gifted him his first guitar. Willie practiced constantly, trying to make sense of the sounds he heard in church, on the radio, and in the dance halls around town. By age 7, he had already written his first song. By high school, Willie began performing with local bands. He spent nights playing at small events, school dances, and anywhere willing to give him a little space on stage. However, while his talent was obvious, he had a reputation for being a troublemaker. Not in a harmful sense, but in a restless, independent way that hinted at the artist he would later become. In the 1950s, he moved to Nashville, the center of country music, hoping to break through as a songwriter and performer. But Nashville's music scene was controlled by strict systems and polished expectations. And although he wrote constantly, many of his early songs were rejected. Willie had to work odd jobs just to support himself while trying to convince the industry to take him seriously. Slowly, his songs began to reach the right artists. Crazy, performed by Patsy Cline, became one of the biggest hits in country music history, while Hello Walls, recorded by Farron Young, shot up the charts. Willie's songwriting finally earned recognition, even if the industry still didn't see him as a star in his own right. But as the years passed, Willie grew frustrated with Nashville's heavily controlled sound. He didn't fit the mold. His voice was too distinct, his writing too raw, and his personality too independent. So instead of fighting the system, he made the bold decision to step away from it completely. This decision led to the creation of the outlaw country movement, a group of artists who rejected Nashville's polished formulas and embraced a more honest, unfiltered style. Willie's breakthrough albums, including his early outlaw records, redefined the genre. His sound blended country, blues, folk, and personal storytelling in a way no one else could replicate. The public responded, and Willie Nelson became a central figure in one of the most important shifts in country music history. However, his rise and success didn't erase the personal struggles that followed him from childhood into adulthood. Behind the fame and glory, Willie fought intense battles that would shape the legend he eventually became. The dark side of Willie Nelson. For decades, Willie Nelson looked like the picture of success. But behind that image was a long struggle he rarely spoke about in detail. His rise made him a legend, yet the pressure that came with it pushed him into habits and routines that slowly pulled him toward a darker path. The trouble began when his music career took off, and the pace of his life became almost impossible to manage. Long nights on the road, endless shows, and the weight of trying to prove himself wore him down. Willie later admitted that during those years, he drank far more than he should have. What started as a way to unwind after performances slowly turned into something he depended on. He once described that period as a stretch of his life where he would get drunk every night, drifting through crowded bars, after-parties, and empty hotel rooms with a growing sense that he was losing control. Willie felt himself slipping. The image of the calm storyteller he portrayed on stage didn't match the man who went home each night feeling restless, unsettled, and unsure of where his life was heading. Willie later confessed that he had gone through an extremely dark time, where the choices he made off stage didn't reflect the stability he hoped for. Fans only saw the music, the energy, and the humor, but not the exhaustion piling up behind the scenes. His lifestyle during those years didn't help matters. Willie smoked heavily, a habit that quickly became part of his daily rhythm, especially on the road. For a while, he told himself it didn't matter. He was young, active, and constantly moving. But by his 40s, the damage became harder to ignore. He developed respiratory problems, sometimes struggling to breathe during long sets. Doctors warned him that the combination of smoking and his exhausting travel schedule was wearing down his lungs. The reality hit him harder than expected. He had always associated strength with endurance, especially his ability to keep working, keep performing, and keep moving. But now he was being told that the pace he set for himself was harming him more than helping him. This realization marked a turning point. Willie made a decision people around him didn't expect. He quit smoking completely. It wasn't easy, and it took time, but he eventually walked away from the habit altogether. Little by little, he began reshaping his life. He adopted healthier routines, like cleaner eating, more rest, and long stretches on his ranch where he could breathe without the pressure of touring crowds. Although he kept using some substances he claimed helped him relax and stay level, the change in his overall lifestyle made a noticeable difference. His breathing improved, his energy returned, and for the first time in years, he felt like he had regained control of his own life. Even with those improvements, the respiratory issues never fully disappeared. Emphysema and lung strain followed him into his older years, sometimes forcing him to slow down whether he wanted to or not. In 2024, he had to cancel a set of shows due to illness, and rumors spread quickly. Fans feared the worst. But only a short time later, Willie returned to performing with the same steady presence he had always carried. Through every stage of his life, one thing has remained constant, and that's music. Willie leaned on it in a way few artists can describe. It gave him direction when his personal life felt unstable and gave him strength when his body struggled to keep up. Even in his 90s, he's continued recording, touring, writing, and stepping onto stages with the same calm confidence people had admired for decades. But while his health battles have been challenging, Willie's deepest wounds are emotional. His personal life has been filled with tragedies, complicated relationships, painful heartbreaks, and losses that stayed with him for years. Turbulent family life and tragedies. Behind Willie Nelson's music is a family history shaped by loss, complicated relationships, and moments that tested him in ways his fans never knew. He grew up with a constant feeling of instability that never fully left him. And even as he built his adult life, he tried to create the kind of family he never had growing up. But his reality became far more tangled and painful than he expected. In December 1983, Willie lost his mother, Merle, to cancer. The relationship between them had always been complicated. She had re-entered his life years earlier, but the early absence lingered in the background. Her death closed a chapter he never fully understood. And even though their relationship wasn't simple, the loss still cut deeply. It reminded him how much unresolved history stood behind him. But this heartbreak was nothing compared to what happened in 1991. That year, Willie lost his son Billy, who was only 33. The death was sudden and devastating, and Willie rarely discussed it publicly. When he did, he spoke quietly and with great care. The grief marked him in a profound way that never fully healed. Insider reports later revealed that this loss stayed with him constantly, a weight he carried quietly. without turning it into public conversation or publicity. As the years went on, more family losses followed. His older sister Bobby Nelson, who had been his closest musical partner and one of the most constant figures in his life, passed away in 2022. Willie and Bobby had spent a lifetime performing together, from early church shows in Texas to major stages around the world. Her death didn't just take away a sibling, it took away the person who had shared the entire journey with him from the beginning. These tragedies were part of a family life that was already complicated. A documentary titled Willie Nelson and Family revealed the full picture. Willie is the father of 8 children, born across several marriages and relationships. While he never hid from this fact and tried to stay in contact with his children, the size of the family and the circumstances surrounding it created emotional challenges that shaped many of his decisions. In fact, his marriages reflected the same complicated mix of love, conflict, and personal struggle. Willie married Martha Matthews in 1952 when he was just 19 and she was 16. They had 3 children together, and their relationship was turbulent from the beginning. Both were young, both were overwhelmed, and the pressure of raising a family while Willie struggled to build his career created a difficult home environment. Arguments escalated, and the marriage became marked by volatility and unhealthy behavior on both sides. By 1962, after 10 years of trying, the marriage ended. It was a painful breakup and left emotional marks on everyone involved, including their children. His second marriage began almost immediately afterward. In 1963, Willie married Shirley Colley, a singer who shared his passion for music. For a while, their home life appeared calmer than his first marriage. They performed together, traveled together, and built a partnership grounded in the shared rhythm of the music world. But the calm didn't last. One day, Shirley found a hospital bill addressed to Willie for the birth of a baby, a child born to another woman. The discovery changed everything. It confirmed that Willie had fathered a child outside the marriage, and the relationship could not recover from that breach of trust. Their divorce in 1971 came as a painful turning point. Willie then married Connie Koepke in the same year the second marriage ended. Their daughter, born during the final years of his marriage to Shirley, was already part of Willie's life, and Connie soon gave birth to another daughter. For a time, this relationship felt more grounded. Connie supported his career, understood the demands of his schedule, and helped keep stability at home. But as Willie's fame grew, the old patterns returned. Touring schedules, long separations, and infidelity eventually pulled the marriage apart. By 1988, after 17 years together, Willie and Connie divorced. His fourth marriage, however, marked a different chapter. In 1991, Willie married Annie D'Angelo, a makeup artist he met during his film work in the 1980s. They had 2 sons together and built a home life that was calmer and more stable than his previous relationships. Annie brought a steadiness he hadn't experienced before, and their marriage has lasted for more than 3 decades, a stark contrast to the turbulence of his earlier years. Willie has often spoken about the peace this relationship brought him, and many people close to him say Annie became the grounding force he needed. Even with all the family pain, Willie never distanced himself from his children. In interviews, he emphasized that every one of them mattered to him, and that he tried to stay connected despite past complications. The large family, the many relationships, the losses, and the difficult chapters all became part of a life that was far more tangled and emotional than his calm public image suggested. But these tragedies and conflicts also led to one of the biggest crises of Willie's life. A financial battle that almost cost him everything he had spent his life working for. Financial struggles. One of the most overwhelming experiences of Willie Nelson's life was the financial crisis that hit him in 1990. It was the kind of event that could have destroyed a person's life completely. Instead, it became one of the most defining chapters of his story, a reminder of how quickly success can disappear and how hard a person must fight to rebuild what was lost. The trouble began with a series of investment decisions during the 1980s. Willie, like many performers at the time, relied on financial advisors to manage the complicated side of his income. Unfortunately, they directed him into tax shelters that were later ruled illegal by the government. When the Internal Revenue Service reviewed those investments, the penalties were enormous. In 1990, the Internal Revenue Service hit Willie with a tax bill of around $32 million, one of the largest personal tax debts in the history of the United States. He didn't have the money. No one in his position would have. This bill didn't just appear on paper. It came with consequences so severe that they changed his life overnight. On November 9, 1990, federal agents began seizing Willie's property. His ranch, his belongings, recording equipment, valuables, memorabilia, and almost everything he owned were taken as part of the effort to recover the debt. His bank accounts were frozen. His Texas ranch was padlocked. Even his master recordings were cataloged for possible sale. Fans who followed the news at the time described it as surreal. Willie Nelson, a man whose music had become woven into American culture, suddenly had almost nothing left. But what stood out was how calm he remained. Instead of panicking or disappearing from the public, Willie focused on finding a way forward. Lawyers eventually negotiated the bill down. They challenged the original assessment, argued the penalties, and worked through years of financial documents. In the end, they reduced his total responsibility to around $9 million, and the Internal Revenue Service agreed to settle for $6 million in cash. Even with the reduction, it was still an impossible amount for Willie to pay on short notice. His assets were gone. His accounts were frozen, and touring alone couldn't cover such a massive debt. That's when he made a decision no one expected. Willie proposed releasing an album where the proceeds would go directly to the Internal Revenue Service. Instead of hiding his situation, he put it in the open and tried to turn it into something constructive. In 1992, the project was released as the Internal Revenue Service Tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories. The album was a collection of acoustic recordings that Willie made specifically to help repay the debt. The response was remarkable. Fans bought the album not just because they loved the music, but because they wanted to help him recover. Radio stations promoted it. Local stores featured it. Newspapers wrote about it. People who had followed Willie for decades saw the situation not as a scandal, but as a moment where he needed support. And they showed up. The Internal Revenue Service cooperated too. They agreed to take the album's earnings directly, letting Willie use his music as a form of payment. It wasn't a quick solution, because the debt still took years to clear, but the plan worked. Slowly and steadily, the balance dropped. With the album sales, the income from touring, and the reduced settlement amount, Willie finally paid off his debt and avoided bankruptcy entirely. The experience humbled him, but it didn't break him. Willie later said that losing everything forced him to understand what he truly valued. He didn't complain, blame others publicly, or treat the situation as an embarrassment. Instead, he treated it as something he had to face and move through. And in the process, he learned just how loyal his fan base really was. Many artists in similar situations would have stepped away from the spotlight or disappeared under the pressure. Willie did the opposite. He kept performing, kept recording, and stayed connected to the people who supported him. He took a crisis that could have ended everything and turned it into a reminder that he could rebuild, no matter how much he lost. Once the financial storm finally passed, Willie returned to a calmer life. But the years that followed brought their own complications, from legal issues to public controversies and headlines that kept his name in the news for reasons far beyond music. Some were minor, and some were so serious they nearly cost him everything. Arrests and controversies. Willie Nelson's public image has always been relaxed, friendly, and easygoing. But the headlines and scandals connected to him over the years tell a more complicated story. His personal beliefs, his advocacy work, and his long association with plant-based relaxants put him at odds with law enforcement more than once, and these scandals followed him well into his later years. For decades, Willie has been outspoken about his support for the legalization of certain plant-based substances. But this wasn't just a casual stance he mentioned in interviews. He became actively involved in national organizations pushing for reform of the substance. His connection to the movement made him one of the most recognizable supporters of legalization in the United States, which naturally brought both admiration and criticism. The first scandal happened in 1974, when he was arrested for possession during a stop in Texas. It made headlines largely because of who he was, not because the case itself was unusual. Willie treated the incident lightly in public, but it marked the beginning of a pattern that continued for decades. More arrests followed, often during travel or while he was on tour. One of the most widely publicized happened in 2006, when Willie was arrested in Louisiana after police found various controlled and illicit substances on his tour bus. The case didn't lead to serious consequences, but it revived public debates about his outspoken lifestyle and the legal risks that came with it. There were several other incidents over the years, but not all of them were dramatic, and some barely lasted more than a few news cycles. But together, they formed a long list of run-ins that kept Willie's name tied to controversy. His celebrity status often softened the outcomes. Cases were dismissed, fines were reduced, and sometimes the stories faded almost as quickly as they appeared. Still, each incident strengthened the public's perception of Willie as someone who refused to hide his views, even when they brought legal trouble. Surprisingly, his advocacy didn't stop at statements or organizational work. Willie eventually founded Willie's Reserve, a commercial plant-based brand created after legalization expanded in several states. The company reflected his long-held beliefs and became part of his broader business portfolio. Throughout these controversies, Willie continued to speak publicly about why he supported the use of these substances. He often said it helped him manage stress and stay balanced through the pressures of constant touring and fame. He described it as a natural way for him to cope with life's demands, though he never encouraged others to adopt his lifestyle or made it part of his musical identity in a promotional sense. Despite the repeated arrests and public attention, none of these controversies managed to overshadow his music or long career. Fans saw them as part of his personality and the rebellious streak that helped define the outlaw country movement, while critics argued that he should have taken fewer risks. In recent years, these old controversies have taken on a different tone. Instead of scandals, they're now viewed as part of his history, chapters in a long life filled with both triumphs and difficulties. And after so many decades in the spotlight, the public has learned not to jump to conclusions whenever his name appears in the news. That became especially clear when a wave of health and death rumors began circulating online, alarming fans who feared the worst. Nelson debunks shocking rumors. In recent years, Willie Nelson has had to deal with a new kind of problem that came from the internet. False reports about his present condition have been spreading across social media, especially on Facebook, where stories claiming he was in critical condition or even already dead appeared again and again. Many of these posts were made to look like real news articles, complete with dramatic headlines designed to scare people who cared about him. Some of the stories even used artificial intelligence-generated images showing Willie lying in hospital beds, surrounded by machines or medical staff. These images looked convincing enough to fool people scrolling quickly on their phones. The posts spread rapidly, shared by worried fans who believed they were sounding the alarm. The problem grew larger as more pages began repeating the same false story, each one slightly altered to avoid detection. It became clear that the rumors weren't isolated mistakes. They had turned into a cycle of misinformation aimed at creating confusion for the sake of clicks. For fans, the experience was unsettling. Willie Nelson has been a steady figure in American music for so long that any suggestion of danger or decline hits a nerve. People who saw the fake headlines reacted with fear, sadness, or frustration. Many didn't know which sources to trust. Even longtime followers admitted they were shaken by the images, especially because they appeared so realistic. The constant stream of false reports created a sense of exhaustion among fans who simply wanted the truth. Eventually, Willie decided he had seen enough. Instead of releasing a formal statement or doing a long interview, he chose a more direct approach. He posted a short and sharp message on Instagram. The post was a carousel of photos that slowly zoomed closer and closer to his face, ending with a stern, unimpressed glare. It was humorous at first glance, but there was a clear message behind it. He was tired of being declared dead by internet strangers, and he wanted people to understand how absurd the rumors had become. His caption was equal parts playful and firm. It read, "If you believe those AI death stories one more time." This was a warning to fans about the fake stories circulating online, and he made it clear that he wasn't pleased about being used for false headlines. He also called out the endless AI slop responsible for generating misleading images, pointing out how easy it has become for bad actors to create something that looks real enough to fool millions. Coming from someone who rarely addresses online drama, the tone of the post stood out. The reaction from fans was immediate. Comments poured in, some expressing relief, others expressing irritation at how often they had been misled. Many wrote about the emotional roller coaster they experienced after seeing yet another fake headline pop up on their feed. A few admitted they had almost believed the stories because of how realistic the images looked. There was a mix of humor and frustration as people thanked Willie for setting the record straight and reminded each other to double-check sources before sharing anything alarming. The post also caught the attention of major media outlets. They highlighted Willie's response, using it as an example of a growing issue many celebrities now face: AI-generated misinformation spreading faster than the truth can keep up. These articles pointed out how easy it has become to manipulate images, create false reports, and produce fabricated hospital scenes that look convincing to anyone scrolling quickly through social media. Willie's message helped bring attention to the larger problem, not just for him, but for every public figure targeted by misleading AI content. Willie Nelson is currently 92 years old, and despite the challenges that come with age, he remains active. He is still performing, still recording, and still showing up for his fans with the same steady presence he has carried for decades. While he has had health setbacks, none match the dramatic claims circulating online. His team has been clear that he continues to work at his own pace, adjusting when needed, but not stepping away from music. Willie Nelson may move slower than he once did, and he may face health issues that come with age, but he continues to live his life with intention and a sense of grounded confidence. And when the world tries to write the ending to his story before its time, Willie reminds everyone that he is still writing it himself. What do you think about the rumors surrounding Willie Nelson? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you love juicy deep dives into celebrity lives, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new video.